Hello everyone, in this video we're going to look at the puzzle game Sudoku. So what we're going to do is write a program that verifies a Sudoku solution. So it's going to read in a game grid and store it as a two-dimensional array and then make sure that this is a valid solution. So we've got a bit to get through in this video. So firstly, how are we going to approach this? Well, the idea of Sudoku is we have a 9 by 9 grid. And the grid is further divided up into 3 by 3 cells. Now, the idea of Sudoku is that each row contains the numbers 1 to 9. And each column contains the numbers 1 to 9. So 9, 7. And each 3 by 3 cell has to have the numbers 1 to 9 in it. So you can see right away that this cell has the number 9 and the number 7 twice. So already we know that this is not a valid grid. So that's the goal of this program, to make sure that each row has the numbers 1 to 9. Each column has the numbers 1 to 9. And each 3 by 3 square has to have the numbers 1 to 9 in them. So, let's get started. Over in Eclipse, I've created a new project called Sudoku, and created a new class called Check Sudoku Solution, which is empty at the moment because we're going to modularize this and have a few numbers. So, sorry, a few methods. The first one we're going to make is a method that takes an array of integers and decides whether that array of integers contains the numbers 1 to 9. So public static boolean is 1 to 9, and it's going to take an int array, and we're going to call this list. Now, how do we approach this? Well, the first thing we're going to do is copy our array, because this array will get passed in as a reference, meaning if we change this, we change the original array that was passed in as a parameter. So the first thing we're going to do is make a copy. So int array temp equals new int, and we're going to take the length from list, so list.length. So we're going to create a new array, and then we're going to use system.array copy to copy this array. So we're copying the array list now from source position, so we're starting from 0, and we're going to copy into temp, and we're starting at 0 here, so we're copying to the start of this array, and the length is going to be list.length. So now we have our own copy of the array that we can do anything we want with. So what we're going to do is actually sort this. Now we're going to use Java's built-in sorting function, so we don't have to write our own. So java.util.arrays.sort, and we're going to sort temp. The reason for this is we want to be able to do this quickly. So if we had our array in any random number, so let's do a simple one, 4, 5, 2, it wouldn't be easy for us to just make sure this had the numbers 1, 2, 3 in it, because we'd have to, have some sort of temporary Boolean array that was keeping track of what numbers we saw. Whereas if we sort this first, we end up with 2, 4, 5. We can just loop through from 1 to 9 and make sure that the array at this index represents what we're looking for. So it's a performance thing. We do have to do a sort, but it makes our method a lot more simple. So all we need to do now is for int I equals 0, I less than 9, I plus plus, if our array at I, now we're using temp here because we don't want to modify, because that's the one that we've sorted, if temp at I does not equal I plus 1, so in other words, if I is equal to 0, if the first element of the array is not equal to 1, then we return false. And that is the same for the rest of them as well, and that should be a plus sign, not an equal sign. Return false. Now, if we've made it all the way through this loop, that means that we can return true. So that's the first step at solving this problem. we've generated a method that decides whether an array that we pass in has the numbers 1 to 9 in it. So the next step we're going to do is write a method called isValid, which is going to actually do all of our calculations to decide whether this is a valid Sudoku puzzle. So public static Boolean isValid. Now, this is going to accept a two-dimensional array that represents our grid. Int 2D array grid. So what we're going to do in this method is essentially we're going to loop through all of these cases. So we're going to check all the rows, we're going to check all the columns, and then each 3x3 cell as well. So that's how we solve this problem. The first step is we're going to check each row. And we can do this really easy with a single for loop. So for int I equals 0, I less than 9, I plus plus. If not is 1 to 9, grid at I, return false. So what we're doing here is we're looping over each row in our array. Now remember that each row in our array is also another array, which is why we can get away with passing in grid I into 1 to 9 is 1 to 9 method, because this accepts an array, and this is actually an array because it's a two-dimensional. So if this is not 1 to 9, we're going to return false. So that's the first part of this. We've checked all the rows to make sure that they contain the numbers 1 to 9. The next step is we're going to check the columns, which is a bit more complicated because we can't do something simple like this. We need to actually construct an array that contains each number from our column. So we're going to have another array, another for loop. Int j equals 0, j less than 9, j plus plus. And inside here, we're going to declare a new array, int column, because new int, and of course there's 9 numbers in this column, so the length is going to be 9. Now inside here, we're going to have an inner for loop, for int I equals 0, I less than 9, I plus plus. And what we're going to do here is fill our column array. So column at I equals our grid at I j. So we're constructing the values from our column and putting that into array. Now that we've done that, we can actually check this using a similar condition to what we had above. So if not is 1 to 9, I've put this in the wrong spot, I'll fix it in a sec. Return false. This is supposed to go inside our first for loop, so it should be here, because we want to test this for each column, so it makes perfect sense. What is this complaining about? Int column, int array column. Okay, so in this part, we've checked the columns. And it was a bit more complex because we had to generate this array for each column. It's a similar approach to each cell. We need to generate an array that contains the elements of our cell. And we have to do this for every cell. So this is going to be a little bit more complicated in that we have to do a few more loops. So the first one, for int I equals 0, I less than 3 this time because there's 3 cells, I plus plus. So this is looping over the cells like this, then this, then this, then that. So we need another for loop here. So for int j equals 0, j less than 3, j plus plus. All right, so we're going to declare an int here called k, and it's going to equal 0. Now what we're going to do is declare a new array, int array list equals new int, and this is going to be of length 9 because we're generating the array that we're going to send to this method here. Okay, so the next step is we're going to get all the numbers from our particular cell, and we need another couple of loops to do this. So for int row equals I multiplied by 3, the reason for that is because we need to jump over 3 to get to our next cell. So row multiplied by 3, row less than I multiplied by 3 plus 3. So in other words, whatever we start at, so this should be 3, whatever we start at plus 3. So we're looping for 3 values. Row plus plus. Now we need another loop here, which looks kind of similar. For int column equals j multiplied by 3, column less than j multiplied by 3 plus 3, column plus plus. Oops, my apologies. Oh no, that's correct. All right. Inside here, we're adding to an element in our array. So we're going to do a bit tricky here. List at k plus plus. So we're incrementing k inside our array index. And that's fine. What this means is this will return whatever it was the first time. So the first time through our loop, this is equal to 0. So this means list at 0. And then after this line of code is executed, k gets incremented. And what we're going to store in here is our grid at row column. So this is how we're constructing our array that we're now going to pass to is 1 to 9. So if, again, not is 1 to 9, list, we're going to return false. And if we make it through all of that, that means that we've checked everything. I'll put a comment in here. So if we get all the way down to here, it means that we've checked all the rows and they were okay. We've checked all the columns and they were okay. And we checked each 3 by 3 cell and that was okay as well. If we get to this point in the program, it means that we can return true. It is a valid solution to the Sudoku puzzle. So that is the core of our logic for this algorithm. So first we created a method is 1 to 9, which just decides whether the elements in an array contain the numbers 1 to 9. And we did all of this logic to test whether a board is valid. Now we're just going to put some test code around this so that we can test our solution. So public static void main string array args. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is read a solution from the input. So what we're going to do is import scanner. And we're going to create another method to make things a bit easier called read solution. So public static, this is going to return a 2-dimensional array which contains our grid. Int array read solution. Actually, we'll call this read a solution. Alright, so scanner input equals new scanner system.in. Oops. And we're going to have a message telling the user what to do. System.out.println. Enter a Sudoku puzzle solution. Okay, now we're going to declare an array here, which we'll return in a minute. So int array grid equals new int, which is going to be 9 by 9. All right, and now we're going to have a nested for loop to read in each number. So for int I equals 0, I less than 9, I plus plus. For int j equals 0, j less than 9, j plus plus. We're going to go grid at I, j equals input dot next int. And then after all this looping, we're going to return grid. All right, so now we've got a way of reading in a Sudoku solution, which we can use over and over again, which is why we put it as a method. So in our main method now, we're going to declare a 2D array, and we'll call this grid as well. And we're going to initialize this with whatever read a solution returns. So read a solution. And now all we're going to do is print out whether it's valid or not. So system.out.println. And what we're going to print is this, is valid grid. So we're going to have a ternary operator here. Valid solution or invalid solution. So if is valid returns true, we print valid solution. Otherwise, we print invalid solution. So with that, that's all the coding we need to do to decide whether a Sudoku challenge solution is valid. So what I'm going to do here, just to speed things up, is I'm not going to type in 81 numbers to the console. So what we've got here is in my workplace Sudoku bin directory, I've got a text file that contains a grid of numbers, which represents our Sudoku solution. So what we're going to do here is pipe that into our program. So if I type dir here, you can see we've got our class file and our text file that contains a possible solution. So we're going to run Java, check Sudoku solution, and we're going to pipe into that check Sudoku solution.txt. So let's press enter, and it said that that's a valid solution, which is fantastic because I know for a fact that this is a valid Sudoku solution. So with that, that's really all there is to this video. I know it was a long one, but I'm glad you stuck with it. So in this video, we created a method that decided whether an array contained the numbers 1 to 9, and we used that over and over in our program. We use this method to make sure that each row in our grid contains the numbers 1 to 9, and to do that was easy. We just simply passed in a row as a parameter because we could do that because it was a 2D array. Then we used it to decide whether all columns had the numbers 1 to 9. And to do that, we had to have a loop that constructed a single dimensional array from each column. And then finally, we decided whether each 3x3 square had the numbers 1 to 9 in it. And to do that was a little bit more complex because we had to loop over each cell and construct the array from our rows. But with that, we've created a program that can tell you whether a Sudoku solution is valid. So that's it for this video. Thanks a lot.